Blogosfere has the pleasure to meet David Brain, European CEO of Edelman and the writer of Crowdsurfing. Hi David, and welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
We would like to talk a bit about politics. Politics has developed a different way to communicate with citizens since Barack Obama ran the election. We have only seen the power of social networking during his campaign, aimed to gather people and funds. How is it going to affect everyday politics, and what about Italy?
I think it's going to affect all of politics from now on, and definitely Italy. I mean, social media is very advanced here. I think the Obama campaign was the first internet campaign. It was the first campaign that social media played a large role. There were a couple of points, I think, in the way in which he managed his campaign that all politicians around the world will have taken notice of. I think the first one of those was in terms of how he raised money, particularly during the nomination process. And I think a lot of us felt that it was somehow more legitimate to have $20 donated by 1 million people than to have $1 million donated by 20 people. So he got a legitimacy in his fundraising, and that was a very democratic thing. But then if you look at Obama.com, and anybody who's interested in social media, I recommend just go and have a look at what's been done on that site. You know, much of it we couldn't do in European countries because it's been developed with the, obviously the American political and legal model in mind. But some of the aspects were just brilliant. One of the things that were one of the favourite things for me on it was the way in which he invited his supporters to get on the telephone and to call other Americans, and he'd given them a suggested script and he gave them phone numbers. And so you can imagine the scene. You're in a family house in America and you get a phone call from another American citizen who you don't know, but who is not a professional, who's trying to get out the vote for Obama. And millions of phone calls were made by normal Americans to other normal Americans. So there's something fundamentally democratic, I think, about the way in which he was able to harness the crowd. And I don't believe any politician in Italy or anywhere in Europe will have missed the lessons that he gave.
What do you feel about Italian situation on politics and the use of social networking?
Social networking is a fact of life here in Italy, as in every other country. I always ask my colleagues what's different about social media in Italy, and my colleagues here, you tell me if it's true, say that Italians love to talk, and that social media is like a new form of cafe society. I think technically one of the things that's different in Italy is mobile. You guys are obsessed by your mobile phones, and as we know, broadband is slightly behind. Uptake of broadband is slightly behind in Italy compared to other European markets, but ownership of mobile phones is the highest in Europe, and probably only a couple of Asian countries can match you. So, pretty soon we're going to have this collision of 2.0, Internet 2.0 with the mobile. And when that happens, Italy are absolutely in the forefront of it. I don't know personally any Italian politicians who are doing. I mean, some of the, Pepe Grillo, I think is, he's famous worldwide. So I think you've got some good examples here of how people are using social media. When I first started looking at blogging 3-4 years ago, one of the inspirations for me was the then CEO of Ducati. Not the current CEO, the one before, who used to blog about his personal experiences with his own products and how he tested products and what it was like to drive his bikes out on the weekend. And that was one of the first fantastic examples, I think, of a CEO directly connecting with customers and consumers rather than doing it through the more traditional ways.
Let's talk about business. Do bloggers have a real impact on enterprises?
Yeah, the book Crowdsurfing we just wrote, we talked to a number of companies, and probably the best example was Dell. You'll all be aware, I'm sure, of what Dell went through 3 or 4 years ago when one lone blogger, a guy called Jeff Jarvis, posted on his blog, which was called Buzz Machine, a post which said, my Dell computer is not good, it's rubbish. I think he called it lemony, and the service is rubbish. And his blog is quite famous, and thousands of people came to his blog and said, yeah, we've had the same experience. And pretty soon that community set up a blog of its own called ihatedell.net. And there you had a big company like Dell, and if you Googled Dell, Dell.com was number 1, but number 2 was ihatedell.net. Now you imagine the impact that that has on sales, on brand. You imagine the impact that has on employee motivation. You imagine the impact it has on ability to hire the best people. So it does have a huge impact on companies, and I think they're only just beginning to realise that. All companies are, I think, are afraid of bloggers, and sometimes they have a right to be afraid of bloggers. People are going to talk about your company and your product. If it's important to them, and most companies want to be important to their customers, if it's important to them, people are going to talk, and they're going to come online to talk. And a company really has one choice, one simple choice to make. Do you join the conversation or don't you join the conversation? If you don't join the conversation, then you can't really complain if your product or company is not characterised in the right way, or if people say bad things, because you're not correcting them. But if you do join the conversation, there's another difficulty. It's like, if you walked into a restaurant and people are talking, you have to join the conversation on their own terms. You can't just walk into a restaurant, say what you want to say and then leave, because that's just socially not acceptable. And it's the same with blogs. So if a company gets into the conversation and engages on blogs, they have to recognise they do it on the terms of the people already there and talking, and they recognise that they're creating a relationship, and a relationship is two-way, and people might disagree with what they say, and they might have very good points. And the company has to learn from those and change. And you can't just start and then stop. Once you start having a conversation, that's it. You're in it for good.